there. The first thing to say is some Zoom reminders. For the moment, would everyone please mute? Great, fantastic. Okay, so while looking at your participants list, which is up here, you can see whether you're muted or not, and we can all see whether you're muted or not. And I can ask to unmute, or you can unmute yourself. Didn't come yet? I didn't see my sent box in. Jennifer, you're not muted yet. I can see, unless you were going to say something. Okay. So what are the other reminders about it? You can feel free to unmute yourself and break in. We'll see how that goes. This is very much an experiment. Please, we can take a few minutes afterwards for comments and suggestions, or you can email them to me or any of us afterwards. The team that puts this together is Jack, Kathy, Susan, Sam, and myself. And it's pretty last minute as of today, so there will be rough edges, but we'll do our best to. This is an idea that we stole from Sawmill River Audubon in New York. So in this bird chat, we'll have announcements, mystery birds, new arrivals and departures, and then the program, which this week is a few slides on swallowtail kites and presentation by Sam. Hello, who is that? Who just joined? Okay, so announcements, upcoming events. Thursday, the 20th, 7 p.m., we're having a program online, Snail Kites, a real Florida survival story by Tyler Beck. So to get to it, you go to YouTube and put Orange Audubon Society in the search field to go to the OAS YouTube channel. And you click on the program that'll be live at 7 p.m. on Thursday the 20th to view it and to be able to ask questions. It'll also be archived on the YouTube site. And consider subscribing to the OAS YouTube channel. This season, many of our OAS programs will be delivered remotely this way. And I'd like to let you know that coming soon is the 2020-2021 brochure. We're nailing down dates for all the events for next year, many of them in altered state, but we are carrying on as best we can to have a full slate of events. And those of you who are on this call are the ambassadors or board members, but I'd like to tell you that the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive Ambassador Program has launched fairly recently. And if you are interested in volunteering for it, just email volunteer at Orange Audubon Society, orangeaudubonfl.org. Okay, so we are starting the mystery birds, and Kathy is going to lead this. Turning it over to you, Kathy.
Okay, so here's how we're going to handle this, okay? If you think you know the mystery bird, you're going to type the name in the chat, and Susan is monitoring, and she will let me know who the first person is, and then I will recognize you and have you unmute, and you can share 1 or 2 tips on how you knew it was that bird, okay? So here's our first mystery bird, and go ahead and type into the chat. Spelling doesn't count, we're not in school, so let's see who can name this bird and how you know it's this bird. So, I'll give you a moment on that. You definitely would see this at Lake Apopka. It's one of the few good places in Central Florida to find this bird. All right, okay.
Very good. Paula.
Okay, so Paula, you know how to unmute yourself?
No, there was somebody before me. It took me forever just to find chat.
Okay.
Oh, Loretta, I'm sorry.
Right. So Loretta, unmute yourself and share 1 or 2 tips on how to identify the fulvous whistling duck. Or Deborah can unmute. I don't know if I can.
Oh,
Yeah,
everybody.
unmute Loretta.
Oh, it says she's not muted.
Oh, okay, Loretta, can you just say a few things about the fulvous whistling duck? All right, well, meantime, how about Paula, you chime in and then Loretta can add. You can unmute yourself, Paula. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, oh yeah, yep.
Well, the opening picture to the presentation was them, so that was pretty easy.
True. We gave you guys an easy one this week.
I
What else
think
is there?
of the dark wings, and because I've seen them a lot at a PubCap.
Mhm.
Okay. And Loretta doesn't have a working microphone. Do you want to type something in the chat, Loretta, to share about the fulvous?
And she just did.
Okay.
Loretta's saying that because of the cinnamon color belly.
Oh, yes, that's a great ID tip. That's it. Excellent. Okay, we're going to move on, and there it is. And this is one of Jack's pictures.
Yeah.
All right. So here's another bird that we're seeing a lot of right now. So go ahead and type in the chat. What's this mystery bird? And Jennifer, you don't need a microphone. You can just type in the answer, and then you can type Y if you want. We're learning. So we're basing, oh, very good. Loretta, I'm sorry. You do your jobs.
No, that's okay.
No, you go ahead.
Loretta has an answer, as does Jennifer, black crowned night heron. So Loretta, if you want to type in Y, or if you have a microphone, I think you don't, but if you want to type in Y, how you identified it as a black crown.
And she's typing. So Lake Apopka is another good place to see this bird, as well as Orlando Wetlands Park, but other local parks have it too. Okay, go ahead, Susan, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And Loretta's saying it's a black crown and bill, and the red eye identifies it as a black crown night heron.
And
Excellent, very good, very good.
you might want to mention that the red eye is good for night vision.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
Red eye is good for night vision. Because normally you see these guys moving around at dusk and dawn as they're either settling in for the night or leaving. When we went on our Puerto Rico trip, it was so cool to see them as they were leaving for the night. It was really neat.
The yellow crown doesn't have a red eye? Or does it? I can't think of it right now.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look. Does anyone know that? And I'll look up my field guide real quick on my phone. I'm not sure. I don't see as many of those since they're coastal, so I'm not as familiar. If anyone else wants to chime in on that, the color of the eye. If not, I'll look it up. I can spell right here. And we have another bird. This is one that fools a lot of people, especially on the Wildlife Drive in Orlando Wetlands. Jennifer, go ahead, Susan. I'm looking at the other thing too.
Jennifer has juvenile gallinule.
Good.
Very good. Jennifer, you want to type in how you knew that? Yeah. So this bird, I know when I first started birding and I saw these on the Wildlife Drive, I thought, oh, there's a new bird here now. It's very tricky because it can sometimes look like something else. And I'm trying to find out the information. The photo on the yellow crown, its eye looks more orange or yellowish. So anyone want to try? Okay, go ahead, Susan.
All right, Jennifer has that the light color underbelly, a distinctive beak, and always hanging around the mama.
Yeah.
And they're not quiet as birds.
No, they're not. So that's great. All right, and I believe this is our last one. This one's busily eating from the, I guess that's duckweed. So who would like to share?
All right, Paula has an answer. She says it's a baby purple gallinule.
All right, Paula, you can unmute yourself and tell us how you knew that so quickly.
Because of all the pictures that people put and they're black or they're dark, I think they're black. That's how I know.
Yes, yes, they're much darker than the common gallinule.
And there's something on the bill, the band around the bill is distinctive.
Yes.
Oh.
Ah,
And as they get a little mature, you'll start seeing like a greenish sheen on them. So they're always going to have more color on them than a common gallinule. All right. Well, so before we move on, if you have a photo you want to submit, we're going to tell you at the end, because we would love to have other people's photos, and they don't have to be, you know, Jack's and Sam quality. You know, we want everyday people's photos, and even silhouettes are great too, because that helps us learn, because a lot of times that's how we see the birds. Okay.
Does it matter if they're recent or older or that?
We would like to try to use birds that are here right now, preferably, so that it could be something, as we bring in more people and we have people that are not as experienced, it'd be good to have things that they might be more likely to see. But yeah, but they could be older pictures of birds that are here now. That's good. All right, so give a little plug. We do monthly surveys at the beautiful Wekiva Springs State Park. It is the model park for Sandhill that's being really well managed, and it's amazing. That's a photo from a couple years ago, and we have two of the original people on the surveys. We have Nancy Prine and Jude, and how do you pronounce her last name? Judson. They were on, there were surveys 10 years ago and 30 years ago. So it's really neat that Paul, the biologist who's in the middle with the clipboard, he restarted those back in 2018. And it's been a lot of fun. It's limited, 8 people. So you let me know if you want to be on the next one. It's generally the second Saturday of the month, generally at 7, though as the seasons change, we will change that time along with that. So let's see. We've had the survey, so the next one will be on the 12th. And this is the wonderful Bachman sparrow that is one of the best places to see one.
And let's guess the next one.
Oh, sorry. All right, who would like to guess? This is another bird, and it's going to be leaving soon. It's going to be migrating. So there's a chance you may see one on the next survey. I've had one coming to my bird bath for about 2 or 3 weeks. Oh, we got a new person. Okay, so good.
go ahead. And it's Dr. Shauna Resnick, says it's a summer tanager.
And Dr. Resnick, if you have a microphone, do you want to share the ID tips on that? If you don't, you can type in.
I'm here, just in the background. My kids are a little noisy, sorry.
No worries.
Just looked like the one I saw out at Merritt Island last summer. So it's red, but it doesn't have the dark beak of the cardinal. There's definitely something about the beak that's different. So that was my first guess.
Excellent. That's very good point. Right.
These are Sam's pictures.
All right. So, and also the summer tanager, you'll find the females are more yellowish. And what's really fun, you get a young male, it'll be yellowish and red, and it's really cool looking. So fall migration has begun, slowly, but we're all excited to see what shows up next and say goodbye, birds that are leaving. And so
I'll explain this, Kathy.
Okay.
So how do we know when to expect arrivals and departures? For many, many years, the authority was the Bird Life of Florida, this very big book that was put together by Henry Stevenson and Bruce Anderson, who's shown here with one of the skins of a waterfowl at a waterfowl workshop. And Bruce is, it still is an important book. I don't mean to say it's not, its time has passed. And the information is collected through breeding bird atlases, which is several year surveys, very detailed surveys of breeding bird status, and Christmas bird counts, and all kinds of other citizen science and professional research. But today we have Ebird from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. How many of you already use Ebird? Raise your hands. And now everybody has to learn how to use raise your hands.
Oh, in the chat.
Oh, yeah. So to raise your hand, you go to the participant grid, and in the bottom right-hand corner is a little hand.
Hmm.
All right.
Sam, you use Ebird. Are you there? Okay, we will
I
be.
can't figure out how to raise my hand.
It's not on the it's not on the participants. It's under the more. The menu that says
Up
more.
here?
Oh,
Thank you, Paula.
thank you. It must be in different places and different systems.
So let's see. I don't see it here under more.
Oh, I see it now. Raise hand. Ha!
Hmm.
It is under participants, but it goes over to the right hand side. Sorry.
Oh, you have to, yeah, go to the bottom of it.
Yep.
Oh, that more. Okay. I don't still see it. Maybe because I'm the host.
I know we are. Oh yeah, I have it under more, not participant, but it is at the bottom.
Do you use Ebird?
Yes.
It's a good thing for everybody to learn how to raise your hand if anybody's still struggling with this.
And I'm not sure how you do it on the phone, but you can just type it into chat. Because Jennifer and Lisa, they raised their hand
They did? I can't see them.
on the chat. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we're going to have more presentations about using Ebird in the coming weeks. So the exciting new arrivals, we're going to feature one, and I'll let Kathy talk about it.
All right, and this is a photo from Sam, and who'd like to put in the chat what these birds are. And they're just starting to come in.
It has a title, it has a name.
Oops, oops. Oh, the title's in there. Okay, never mind. So we saw that. So go back to the picture. Sam, you want to share where you took this photo?
Yeah, it was when another rarity was in town, was out in Osceola County at Joe Overstreet. We were looking for upland sandpipers, and we managed to get the golden plover, but these guys were pretty abundant out there as well, both at H&H sod and on Joe Overstreet, just in the sod fields last week.
Yes, thank you. And they're about the same size as a killdeer, and they have that real sharp mark, you know, between the brown on their top part of their chest and their belly. So that's a really good field mark to identify them. And they won't be here very long. So this map shows,
Where they breed.
yeah, way up there. It's pretty amazing that they come all the way here.
And then where they're going for the winter. Way down here. And
Yeah.
so just passing through. We're really lucky when we catch them.
Yes. So a few have shown up at Lake Apopka, but not a whole lot yet. And that shows the abundance. And oh, this is from Lemery. Yeah, that was when the sod fields was really flooded. I remember that. There was a lot of them there then. So hopefully we'll get enough rain that'll flood some more, and we'll get lots of these shorebirds as they're coming through the next few weeks. So be looking for them.
All right.
Now on to Sam.
All right. So obviously, anybody that's out and about now during this time period, we're catching the end of the swallowtail kites that we have here. There are two subspecies. The ones that we get breed from coastal South Carolina through Florida, west to Louisiana, and sometimes even eastern Texas. The larger subspecies resides and stays in Central and South America, where our birds winter. But there's about 2,500 breeding down there. And overall, there's probably 15 to 20,000 birds. They haven't been monitoring these birds very long, so it's hard to get specific science on them. But they're obviously tracking more of them now, and keeping up with it with a lot of different resources. Out of that 15 or 20,000, we have about 4,500 returning to the U.S. each year. The numbers seem to be going up, which is good, despite all the urban sprawl and degradation of forests and everything else that's affecting everybody. It's actually on the upswing, which seems nice. 3% of the overall birds breed in the U.S., and the majority of those, Florida is definitely the hot spot compared to the other states, the other 6 or 7 states that they breed in here. So they're an interesting bird. They're falcon shaped, pointed wings. They're large. They're, about the same size as a red-tailed hawk, but about half the weight. And everybody knows, most of us on here anyway, that red-tailed hawks are one of the larger birds we see down here as far as a bird of prey. There can be almost 2 feet in length, and obviously a lot of that has to do with the tail. But they only weigh between 12 and 20 ounces. So, like an owl or a lot of birds, they're just lighter, just look bigger. Their wingspan can be almost 4 feet. And as far as the other kites that we see in Florida, they're definitely the largest. The Mississippi kite seems to be the smallest, but I've seen the white-tailed actually nesting in a tree next to a swallowtail kite, and the difference is amazing to see. So it's interesting, just the different sizes when you see these birds flying, and obviously with shorebirds or anything else, when you compare them, it actually makes it a lot easier to figure out what you're looking at. So they have a bright white head and underparts, black wings on their tail and black and back. The wing linings are white, and the flight feathers are black. And obviously you see that if you've seen some of the pictures, and even in person, you get that iridescent blue as well, which is a very interesting pattern as well. The male and female, in most birds of prey, the female's larger, or at least appears that way because of the feathers. On these, it's almost impossible to tell. There's no difference in size or weight. The breeding pairs that we get in Florida and the United States, they seem to be monogamous and sometimes even pair up the following year for the next season. But obviously, just like bars or anywhere else, the single males will try to impress the women, even if they're on occupied nests. They'll bring them sticks, they'll bring them food, but most of the time they actually ignore it, or they'll just refuse it or knock it out of the nest. So they're pretty monogamous and faithful, I guess. They're interesting that they eat, drink, spend so much time in the air, these birds. They also, for the most part, and the reason we see a lot of them down here is because of the insects, which is good for us and good for the crops and good for the farmers. They eat tons of insects, but they'll eat frogs. I think I've got pictures of them with frogs, snakes, and small birds, baby birds. And then I read an interesting thing that in South Florida, the green iguana eggs, they'll go after those because they nest in the trees as well. And which is a good thing too, because they're an invasive species. So they're doing us a favor there. So, and then in their wintering grounds down in South America and Central America, they've been known to eat fruit, which I don't think we've ever documented here that I've read. So.
Hey, Sam, I hear that they eat blue-gray gnatcatchers a lot.
I think I have a picture of one with a fledgling cardinal from Mead Gardens, actually. And if you watch them, they'll come in, and I think whether it's a small bird, I've seen them take snakes out of trees. I had a snake, one with a snake, but I think they'll eat anything they can get a hold of, just like any other bird of prey. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, there was an eagle eating a carcass or a possum on the side of the road that was been hit by a car. I think pretty much everything's an opportune eater at this point because of all the lack of habitat. So, but yeah, they're known to you see them at the tops of these treetops. And at first, when I first saw it, I didn't know what they were doing. And then realized that they were going after these small birds and eggs even that are in the trees. So pretty interesting. They've got a giant migration pattern, which I think we have some pictures of coming up, but 10,000 miles between here and Brazil and Bolivia, where they winter, the birds from here. And what we see now, especially out at Lake Apopka, going on in the last couple of weeks, 400 or 500 of these birds, they're flocking together and feeding and trying to gain anywhere from 10 to 40% of their body weight to fatten up, because it's such a long trip. A lot of it is over the Gulf of Mexico, and they have to do that in a straight shot. Obviously, there's nowhere to land, and so Jack actually turned me on to a note that he had seen about sharks actually following the migration. And I did a little bit of research, and they do that with the warblers. Any bird that's traveling like that has nowhere to land, you'll see a lot on the internet of boats will say, oh, what is this bird? It landed on my fishing boat. And it's, it's a black-throated blue warbler or anything like that. So like every other animal, the shark is opportunistic. And if, these birds run into any kind of downturn, or, they run into a lot of problems of going into tropical depressions just because of the time of the year, it's hurricane season. So, they start off, everything's great, and then they end up with that. They can end up in the water, and I think they lose a lot of birds that way, obviously with the migration pattern. So. And Deb, do you want to go through some of the ARCI stuff, since you know these folks pretty good?
Okay. Dr. Ken Meyer started ARCI, Avian Research and Conservation Institute in Gainesville. He had worked for the National Park Service including on swallowtail kites, and he saw how they had no endangered species status, and they still don't. And the reason was because there was no population data on them. So he found ARCI to establish the population studies on them. And Gina Kent, who's shown down here, she came to work for them about 18 years ago. And we've had both of them, Ken Meyer, talk several times, and we're having him again, as I'll point out. The Apopka kite story, and this is Sam's picture of the Apopka kite this year, but it was the summer of 2017. He was injured and brought to the Center for Birds of Prey in Maitland, and they rehabbed him, but they didn't have a flight cage for him. So they turned him over to the Avian Rehabilitation Center, which is on Lester Road in Apopka, who had the flight cages. And ARC also had 2 other kites in rehabilitation. Somebody, the ARCI, the Avian Research and Conservation Institute, they've had transmitters on, I think, about 10 other birds at that time. And these transmitters are fantastically expensive, but the manufacturer had one ready. And with a little chip in from a few individuals and groups, they were able to put a transmitter on the 3 kites. Wait a minute. Not the 3 kites, just the one, Apopka. And then here are the other 2. So this is Gina from ARCI, and I think these are from ARC, Avian Reconditioning Center in Apopka. She's definitely from ARC. And this is Carol McCorkle, who's the head of ARC. It's a wonderful place, and maybe we'll get them to talk at some point. But anyway, they have the 3 kites with the shield over their heads and ready to release. And then the mayor got to release them. And this was over in Apopka. The reason it's called Apopka was because it's over on Laughlin Road that they released it. And the three just flew away, and they joined the other kites that were there that year feeding. And then they got in their migration pattern. And because it has the transmitter, Gina and ARCI have been able to plot its course. Very dangerous course across the, I'm sorry, this is the northbound course. When they're going south, they go across, hip hop across the islands, Cuba, and get on down here and go down the Andes. So it's quite amazing. And I wanted to wax on with appreciation for ARCI's research that we never would have known this without them. And we're going to have the pleasure of a talk April 15th, not just on swallowtail kites again, but this time on birds and hurricanes by Dr. Meyer. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, and then is there anything else to talk about? Lots to talk about the kites. Sam?
Just to go back on the Apopka bird itself, for those of you that don't know, I normally travel for a living. So I was out of town when they released that bird. I didn't really know much about it. I'm usually gone every summer, so I miss most of the swallowtail kites. And obviously this year there's a little pandemic thing going on, so I've been home. Hence why you've seen all my Ebird reports, because I have nothing else to do. But in March, on the 27th, I went over, I used to bird a lot at the old Rolling Hills golf course over in Longwood. And recently they shut that golf course down probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And finally this county bought it. It's like 100 acres. And they're actually turning it into a park now in the process of it. But I've birded there since I was a kid. I used to ride my skateboard through there. I played golf there. But I go through there, and it's a good spot for birds. And so March 27th, I was going through, and I had 7 swallowtail kites, and they were just kind of cruising around. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and they flew around calling to each other and then landed in a tree 40 feet from me. And so I got some good shots of it, came home and realized that this bird had a transponder on it. So I immediately hit Deb, and I emailed Gina, and she was ecstatic and actually told me that that bird has come back to the same tree for the last 3 years, which I thought was super interesting. It's never nested here or bred successfully, they think, because it doesn't really nest, it roosts just back and forth. So, but I thought it was very interesting that it was 3 years returning to the same little golf course down the street from us. So. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
It is. And they're still clustering and feeding at Lake Apopka now?
Yes. Mary and Bob Sanders and Paul Huber, a lot of them have seen them. I get impatient and it gets too hot and I get out of there and want to go check the sod fields. But they've been getting between 200 and 400 every weekend for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
And
soon they will start moving back. So.
Typically, they really don't show up till 10 o'clock or so. Is that right?
Yeah, like most birds that are in the air most of the time, they're looking for the thermals. So they'll come in, the Mississippi kites come in, and you'll see them throughout the park or throughout the drive. But for the most part, they've been seeing them at the end of Roach, where it meets Laughlin, like far off in the distance, straight ahead of you, coming in from the north. And they've just been, going crazy over the bugs and trying to gain weight. So, and as you and I both discovered today that we were wrong on what a kettle is. But basically, for those of you who don't know, because I did not, but the reason they call it a kettle is because years ago, and they call that for almost any bird of prey that's in the air in groups in massive numbers, but mostly the ones we see out here that are feeding, that wouldn't be considered a kettle by the scientific sense, but more so they kettle before they're migrating. So once they're moving offshore and that kind of thing. But they came from them thinking that it looked like a cauldron and the steam coming off the top was like the birds. So they called it a kettle. which was news to me. So I'm sharing it with you, and hopefully you think it's as interesting as I did. So.
Yeah. In the migration patterns coming south, I understand that raptors go along the spine of the Appalachians because they can catch the updrafts. That's
Yeah, true. And again, going back to the kettle thing, I'm familiar with a place that's in Virginia that's called Hanging Rock Observatory, and they see thousands and thousands of Cooper's hawks go by, but every form of raptor that's doing the migration. They just it's pretty impressive to see when you see these counts come in that are like 12,000 broadwing hawks, and you're like, just amazing to see that. So pretty cool.
Has anyone done a hawk watch on this call? Unmute yourself if you'd like to tell anything about it.
No, I have a question about the kites. For the last 2 years, I've seen them in neighborhoods. Is that normal? Because I'm nowhere near like anything like a pumpkin or anything like that. So, but there is a couple that come near my house for the past couple of years, and I thought that was a little odd, but I don't know if it is or not.
Do you have feeders?
I do, but I haven't actually seen them near my house. It's just where I am is pretty urban. There's not a lot of really greenery, so I was surprised to see them, but they're somewhere around here because I've seen them for 2 years in a row.
I think just like when Sam was mentioning seeing them at Mead Gardens, and I've had them come around my house kind of towards when they're getting ready to leave. I think they're picking feeders sometimes because I know they've gotten doves from around here. So I don't know, maybe someone knows more, but that's my idea about it.
I think that's a good summation. I mean, goes back to the urban sprawl and everything adapting. I mean, look at every light post at the Altamont Mall has an osprey nest on it. It's just they adapt to what we've kind of forced on them, I guess. So it's good to see them in the neighborhoods. I had 14 over my house last week. And the amazing thing with these birds is they'll go higher than any other bird you'll see as far as soaring. And you can watch them rise with these thermals until you can't see them anymore. And it's just, they're pretty interesting. So, and there's lots of info out there on them. And I don't know, it's a cool story with ARCI that they're doing so much for these birds. It's amazing. So
for mentioning that. Anybody else, anything else to add on them before we go on? We're just about wrapping things up, actually. Anything else on them? If not, thank you so much, Sam. And these pictures are gorgeous. This, I think, is one of Jack's. Is that right? Jack and Sam's are both just absolutely beautiful photos. All right. Well, our next bird chat is going to be next week at this time. And this one, we're actually going to repeat this. So you guys who have been here don't necessarily have to come back. But, and then we're going to go on perfecting this format and having other guest speakers for the last half hour. But please submit your photos to info@orangeaudubonfl.org. And so are there any questions on, and this could be a good time for feedback, or you're welcome to privately send us